Welcome to the Creative Prayer Book. I'm Eric Scott, and this is lesson number 7. I can't believe we're on lesson number 7. So for the past 6 weeks, I've been working in this tiny little book from Stillman and Byrne, creating what I'm calling the Creative Prayer Book. So I've been layering a lot of different things. So over the last 5 or 6 weeks, I've really been putting a lot of stuff in here. So watercolor and watercolor pencil and graphite pencil and ink and collage, just a lot of different things to create these very layered, very rich pages. So I'm finally ready to start adding the prayers, the affirmations, the words. So I want to talk a little bit more about those and talk about kind of where I got my ideas, and then show you a couple different things. I'm not going to do all the words today. I'm just going to kind of get started with some of them, and then do a couple other lessons that follow up and talk about using words and text in different ways. So where did I get this idea? So I was asked here recently, why the Creative Prayer Book? Why did I call it that? And I did mention way back in, I think, the introduction, that when I got this little book, it was just really small, and I really liked, that it was just small. It's small and very intimate. And for some reason, this idea of a prayer book popped into my head. Not really sure why. Like I've said before, I'm not very religious, but I really started thinking about that idea of a prayer. It doesn't have to be religious. I mean, this idea of affirmations, or of a wish or a hope or a dream, and that this could be a little book to sort of capture some of that. And so that's how I'm using it. I'm going to use it as a place to put down some affirmations or some ideas about creativity. That's why I call it the Creative Prayer Book, because these to me are sort of prayers to my creativity, for my creativity, about my creativity. So what are they going to be? Well, I mentioned before a while back about doing some index cards. So right here I've got my index cards, and I started these 5 years ago, I think. 5 or 6 years ago. It was quite a while ago. I think my original thought was I was going to do something like this. I was going to use these somehow in my journaling or in my art making, and I just never did anything with them. So I came up with a whole bunch of them. There were like 20 some, and then over the last week I've added to them. So these are just blank index cards. I like the ones without the lines. And I just went down and whatever kind of popped in my head, they were kind of like mantras or affirmations, as I've called them, but they were just ideas, things that I've been thinking, things that have come up before, things I've used in my journaling before, but I decided to write them down. So I have a whole bunch of them. I won't go through them all, but things like be where you are, tell your stories, play, connect to joy. So those are some of them, but I've got a whole stack. And like I said, I sat down this past week and filled out more, so I think I've got more than enough to fill the little book. And so my idea is that one affirmation, one prayer will be per 2-page spread. So I have a total, I think, of 40 some pages in 42 page spreads in here. So I'm going to eventually try to fill them up. But I haven't filled up the whole thing. I mean, I do have a lot of blank spaces, so I'll probably continue this. So I probably I'll finish the lessons, and then I'll go through and kind of use the same ideas to finish the rest of it. But as far as using the words today, so yeah, you could use words in any way. You could write them, you could type them. There's all kind of different things. I'm going to use stencils today. So I have very bad handwriting, even whenever I'm trying to be good about it. And this word play is actually not too bad, but I don't have neat flowery handwriting. I'm not good at hand lettering, so I'm going to use stencils, and I've got a couple variety of stencils. First of all, I've got real flat, flexible plastic ones, and I think now the company that makes these, I'm not even sure who makes them. They're called see-through stencils, and I think now they make them in a clear blue. That way they're a little bit easier to see. But these are old, and you can tell I've used them a lot with acrylic paint, all kinds of other stuff. So I've got kind of a big set. This is going to be, I think I'm going to use this one for the word play. Okay, and then I've got a whole bunch more over here, different sizes that I can use. So, and different styles as well. So this is a Gothic one, and this is a Roman stencil Roman it's called. And then I've got some hard plastic ones over here, and these are all kind of the same style, but just different sizes and different, just different sizes. So I have these, and I've got some bigger ones too. So I might use some of those later. But I want to use the stencils in two ways. So I'm going to show you two different ways that I like to use them. But of course, feel free to use them as much as you want. So like I said, I am going to get into more layering ideas and more layering techniques at a later time, so probably next week and the week after. So I don't want to do all my lettering today, so I'm not going to go and work on every single page. I could stencil certain words or keywords, but so I think I'm going to start off with the word play, since I have it right there on top, and I've got my big stencils over here. So with this, I'm just going to use my Uniball. It's a waterproof pen because I'm going to maybe add some paint or something else to it. And what I recommend writing down anything that you're going to stencil. Write it down so you have it in front of you, even a word like play, because it's amazing how often I misspell words, even simple words, because you kind of get into a different mindset. So having it right in front of you, written out, also helps you, because a lot of times you actually aren't going to start with the first one. You might start with the last or the first letter, but you might actually start with the last letter. So, and actually here I think I might start off with the Y. And why, do you ask? Well, because I want it to fit, but I don't really want it to go on top of this glossy magazine image. So if I start with the Y, and I'm going to put that right in the middle, and so that way I can put the Y right up against that glossy image. Some people will draw a guideline in. I don't. I just kind of eyeball it, and that's the nice thing about these see-through stencils. And I'm not worrying if the plastic moves a little bit. Sometimes the ink will bleed underneath and you'll get these little smears, but I really don't mind that. All right, so change this out. And then I'm just going to try to tuck the A really close up to that Y, and then just do it again. So I'm going to use the ink pen first, but then I'm going to use my Inktense pencils. And one of the reasons I like to do the ink first is that just kind of gives me an outline. And the ink will dry pretty fast. All right. A, now my L. Sometimes people will do this in pencil first, so that way if they make a mistake. But you do have to be careful, because if you misspell a word and you use something like ink or marker, you can't erase it, so you have to kind of fix it. And I don't know how many times I've had some issues with it. All right, and then finally the P. Now, unfortunately, the P kind of comes over a little bit on this other magazine image, but I think it's going to be okay. All right, just make sure it's lined up, make sure it's even. So both techniques I'm going to show you today start off this way, just using the pen to outline it. Now, if you really look at that, it's hard to see the word play. It does not show up very well. So that's why I want to use the Inktense. So some people might naturally color in. I don't like to do that. You may remember from whenever I was doing the shapes with the watercolor and with the Inktense pencils, I go around it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around. I'm going to go on the outside, even right on top of that magazine image. And this is a dark brown. But one of the things I really like about the Inktense pencils is that they are very transparent. So even the dark colors are pretty transparent, especially whenever it gets thinned out with water. So already you can see how that P starts to jump out. And just like before, I don't have to be too particular about how I'm shading the pencil down. If I want to, I can kind of lighten up my pressure and shade it out more. That'll help it blend out a little bit more. And I'm just going to go around each of these letters like this. Okay, so you could see that much better now. But I want to use my water, which is off camera here, and I'm just going to spread it. And then when I spread it, I want to be real careful and go around the outside. So this is probably one of my favorite techniques to do, especially with lettering, because it can really make the lettering pop out away from the background without covering up the background. So what happens is the darker value, the darker color, this dark brown, blends into the negative space. Just darkens it up a little bit. And if it's not dark enough after it dries, I can always go back with an even darker color. Or I might lighten up some of the color that's inside of the letters later. But this is turning out pretty well. So anyway, I'll just keep doing that, spreading that around. Okay, so now you can see how that word play pops out much more than it did whenever I first stenciled in. So I'm going to grab my hair dryer. Of course, that always makes things go faster. Now, I did notice one thing. Right here, this map is starting to lift up. So even though Uhu is a high quality glue stick, it is water soluble. So sometimes things can come unglued or unstuck, especially at the edges. So just put a little bit more glue underneath the edge, glue it back down. Not that big of a deal. Okay. All right, so that's one way that you can use the stencil is to just do the words, and then you could always paint around it. Another way is to kind of embellish the inside. So I want to move on. I think I like this one. Let me grab these back up. Right here, be where you are. Okay, I think creativity really helps you be present, be in the moment, and so that's a good reminder. So maybe find a spot for that. I think I want to do it on one of these blue. Maybe I'll do it right here. So it might say be where you are. And I think maybe if I want the word where to be a little bit bigger. So if I take not my really big ones, because that's just too big, but I think something like this now. So be where you are. So maybe what I'll do is start off with the W. And I'm going to start off the exact same way. So this time I'm not going to work in reverse. So B, E, okay, just want to make sure. All of this on here, all this collage is just regular paper, so it's newspaper or drawing paper. So I can draw right over top of it and not have to worry. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to do the word where. and then that way you can get the idea. Just gotta keep in mind how to spell it. It is so easy to misspell words whenever you're stenciling or drawing them. Okay, so the word where, the E kind of starts to disappear, but my next step, I'm going to use my red Uniball Vision pen. And I'm going to sort of bring some emphasis to this. There are a couple different ways, but one of my favorite ways is to actually embellish, to go inside of the letter. So if I take my pen and I draw a shape inside of it, and so I'm keeping away from the edge, and then I can color that in. And I don't have to be too neat about this. Actually, if I color it in and it looks a little scratchy, that's a interesting style of lettering. So you can see how up here I just kind of put a little tiny dot. Maybe you can see that. All right, just do that to each of these letters. So, I could just color the whole letter in, and that's easy enough to do. But this just gives it something a little bit different, maybe a bit more sophistication. Okay, so just kind of wrap that up. Like I said, I'll probably stencil in the word B and then R, or U and R. So I might make the B and the U smaller, maybe make the U. So the B and the R smaller, and then the U a little bit bigger. So anyway, that you don't need to see me do that. You don't need to see me keep stenciling in any of the words. So I highly recommend stencils for the letters. If you don't have letter stencils, you can find them at office supply stores. You can find them at arts and crafts stores, and they usually have different sizes and different styles. They have some fancy script and other types of fonts that you can use. I stick with the more generic, the stencil Roman and the Gothic or Helvetica. Any of those works really well, but use whatever you want. Some people even cut their own stencils. So anyway, that's just a little bit about coming up with some words, some prayers, some affirmations, some hopes, some wishes, some dreams, whatever you want this to be. So it could be a dream book, a wish book. It could be, you could find quotes from songs or quotes from one of your favorite books to put in there. It's really up to you. I just think of it as this idea, like this creative prayer, this creative affirmation book that's going to be a reminder to me. So anyway, have some fun with some stencils and starting to add some words to your pages. And next week I'll go into some other techniques, some other ideas for using words and letters in your book. So thanks for joining me again for the 7th week. Appreciate it. Probably have a few more lessons left in this series, but thanks. Have a great week and happy creating.